Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our May Project Wildfire meeting. Today we have Nathan Garibay from the Sheriff's Department, Emergency Manager. And he's going to be talking about Sorry about that.
That was my bad. I was afraid that was going to happen when I logged in.
He's going to be talking to us today about evacuation preparedness. So I'm excited for that. Let's start off with some introduction.
I'm Craig Rinkert with Deschutes Market Road Firewise Community.
I'm Mary Ann Kramer with the Alki Woods at Widgie Creek Firewise HOA.
Sherry Mullen, also with Widgie Creek Homeowners Association, head of the Firewise.
Kyle Collins, Deschutes County Planning. David Mormon, American Red Cross.
Greg Ryan, Deschutes Rural Woods.
Hey, good morning. Nathan Garibay, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office Emergency Management.
I'm Oliver Tatum with the Deschutes Rural Fire Protection District number 2 and Sundance Firewise.
Kevin Moriarty, County Forester.
And I'm Corinne Heiner, the Fire Adapted Communities Coordinator. If you are joining us online, could you please do your introduction in the chat for me so that I can record it for our meeting minutes? And then anyone else has some update?
Sure. So let's see, we made a decision on the BLM Community Assistant Grant. We awarded three projects. One was the Deschutes Land Trust, one was Lower Bridge, and one was Plainview Neighbor. We did have quite a few good projects in there. I'd say there was probably at least a half dozen that were pretty competitive. The three that we awarded, they provided a really good description of the project and did meet all the criteria. So it kind of separated them from some of the others. I would say we are going to have that funding potentially next winter as well. And so I'd say anyone who's still interested in that funding to just look at what you've applied for already and maybe just bolster your project as far as the description of what the work would entail. I think we would just like to see a little more in the proposal itself for those projects. Let's see, for the fall fuel reduction grant, the one that was awarded last fall, that award, the reports is coming up June 30th. So I have sent out a form to everyone who is part of that grant. If you have not received a form or for some reason you can't access that form, please let me know because I do need those reports June 30th. Also, for some reason, if like you don't feel you're going to be able to get the work done in time, please let me know and we can try and work with you on that. And then the fuel reduction grant coming up this fall for the 24-25 fiscal year. We have shifted a little bit of money around from our Oregon State Fire Marshal grant. So we will have 75,000 available from that grant. And we're expecting another additional 50,000 in discretionary lottery funds. So that's still tentative. That still needs commissioner approval. But tentatively, we could have up to 125,000 available for that grant. We'll probably put it out around the same time, around September time, with a due date of reporting the following year. So 2025, June 30th would be kind of the grant cycle. We received notification on our community wildfire defense grant. We applied to combine the 7 CWPPs into one. Unfortunately, we were not funded with that grant, but we're still going to try and find other opportunities to combine those CWPPs. So we will still work on that. And then I think last thing I wanted to touch base on was there's a smoke survey right now that I've received. This was put together by the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project and some other partners to kind of get some information about the prescribed fire that's going on right now and how, are you being impacted from the smoke? how are you being impacted? And then also kind of your perception of prescribed fire. So it has a list of questions. It's actually been vetted as a statistically valid, survey. So we're going to send that out via our Project Wildfire constant contact email list. If anyone could please fill that out. It's a smoke survey going over the 24 prescribed burn season.
Kevin, do you want us to forward that or only respond?
Forward it as many people as you can. We're trying to get it out. We're trying to distribute it as widely as possible to get as much information as we can.
How will we receive that on our phone?
We're gonna send it out through our Project Wildfire email server, our email list. So you should receive that. And it's this really simple survey. It even has a QR code to it. So you can, if you send it, people can scan it and get the survey and stuff. I wish I had it on an official site, but it was just sent to me recently. And that's all the updates I have.
So I have numbers from the not landfill 2 weeks fire-free event. We had a total of 4,440 vehicles go through and 16,130 total cubic yards. And so that's just for the not landfill from, that was at May 3rd through the 12th, I believe. And then we still have coming up the days for May 31st through June 8th at the Lapine, Redmond, and Sisters transfer stations. So that is 10 days away. So if you didn't get all of your yard debris out, you still have a week coming up.
Corinne, do you know how that compares to previous years?
I would have to look it up. I could.
We've been trending down as far as cubic yards since COVID. Yeah, so I think like it was pretty high. 50,000 was kind of for all transportations, and landfill was about what we were sitting at. I'd say the average is more like 40,000. We've had about 40,000 cubic yards. I don't know what has changed between now and then. Maybe people are just spacing it out throughout the year. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I think it was post-COVID was when they had their highest numbers, because everyone was probably just getting out and doing work, and then it's kind of trended down since then.
Yeah. I think that is all the updates I have for now. And so Nathan is ready. You ready?
I am ready. I don't know, am I?
Then I will give you the floor and you can share your screen.
Okay, well, we'll see how technically proficient I am today. You'd think as often as we've been doing hybrid meetings, I'd have it figured out, but I never seem to, so. Well, good morning. As Corinne said, I am the emergency manager, work for the sheriff's office, and one of the, probably one of the, I don't know if it's larger, but a significant portion of my job at our program is working to refine and develop better evacuation practices for public safety agencies, but then also to communicate and educate the public around how to evacuate safely and efficiently. I think there's been a lot of lessons learned that I think we've been gleaning in the last several years from looking at a number of fires. And I just want to highlight that both at the local level, we've taken a look at some of like the National Institute of Science and Technology report on the Camp Fire and seeing what, if any, or I shouldn't say if any, but what of those really make sense to incorporate into our local practices, and then working with kind of our partner agencies to kind of evaluate that. And then also at the state level, Oregon State Sheriff's Association has a joint evacuation work group between a couple other committees for OSSA. And we're looking at that at the statewide level, trying to kind of develop more consistent and identify the best practices for communities on evacuation and how our public safety folks can better and more safely accomplish evacuation. So with that, we'll get into. All right. So, so this actually is a picture from 2020 of the Juniper Ridge Fire. You know, if you look at kind of historically when most of our evacuations happen, they tend to happen in August and September. But we have had evacuations occur in March, May. I'm just off the top of my head, March and May for sure. And I think October as well. 2021, we had a fire west of Bend that was during a wind event. And at the same time, same day there was a fire out in Deschutes River Woods, and both of those necessitated some evacuations, and that was in late March. And then I can think of just a couple offhand. We lost a structure in a fire down south of Lapine in May just a few years ago. And that also necessitated evacuation. So, you know, typically we tend to think July, August, September is kind of when we really think about fire risk to communities and evacuation. But when the conditions are right, it can happen a lot more often, or I should say more spread out throughout the year. So first thing we'll cover is alerts. We'll talk about evacuation routes. Make sure you have a go bag, what should be in there, some special planning, importance of working with your neighbors, which is perfect for this group, defensible space. And because we mentioned defensible space, probably we'll hit really light on that in here because I think this is probably a higher, more educated than average group on that. But the reality of it is a lot of folks that I talk to focus on evacuation when there's a lot of other things they could be focusing on. Not that they shouldn't focus on evacuation, but doing your defensible space and working with your neighbors to create a safer community is definitely worth exhausting some intellectual capacity. So we'd always want to encourage that and not just think of evacuation. Talk about the evacuation levels, how to stay informed, and some tips around evacuating. So first and foremost, if there's one thing, I would almost guarantee everybody in this room and online are probably already registered for Deschutes alerts. Hopefully on May 1st, you got a test message. Encourage you to log into your profile at least once a year and make sure that that's current and up to date. People move, change phone numbers, change status as far as additional needs. And if you don't update that, then there's no way for us to know about that. A few things about Deschutes alerts is we have around 55,000 opt-in contacts in Deschutes County, which I've been told is well above average for the state of Oregon. And those opt-in contacts include about 17, and this is totally off the top of my head, so I could be a little off, but about 1,700, I believe, contacts that have identified as having some sort of additional needs. So we have some processes around utilizing that information to support evacuation and other emergencies. Not that we can guarantee that we can provide special service or additional help during an evacuation, but it is good information for us to know so that if the opportunity presents itself, we can afford some more resources to help folks that might need it. We also do an annual test every year, and that's part of a process that we do not only to educate the public around Deschutes alerts, but also to encourage them to update their profile. And it also helps us clean up our data. So when people move, they never opt out until we send them a test message, and then they call and be like, "Why'd you send me a message?" I'm like, "Oh, well, we're happy to take you out of the system." So, and then encourage them to sign up for a system wherever they move to. So, but we do that once a year. That's part of our, not only part of our just part of testing our capability, but also refining that data set. So in Oregon, Deschutes County has had alert warning for years and years. In 2016, we switched to a product called Everbridge, which is what we're currently using. And then a couple of years ago, the state of Oregon, after the 2020 Labor Day fires, determined that every county in the state should have some sort of alerting capacity. And they developed a program called OrAlert. and basically provide alert warning to every county in the state if they choose to go with the state vendor, which we already had the state vendor, so it worked out great for us. So now the state of Oregon pays our Everbridge bill. So gotta like that. But encourage you to go to oralert.gov. That is the landing page for the whole state of Oregon. 35 of the 36 counties, I think, have switched to the state vendor. But even the ones that aren't, you can put in your address or your county and it'll take you to the correct landing page for that jurisdiction. So if somebody happens to have a loved one or family member that doesn't live in Deschutes County, or has a second home, or is watching this video and doesn't live here or moves, you can always, to somewhere in Oregon, you can always go to OrAlert to find the landing page for them. All right, we talk about go bags a lot in preparedness. There's kind of two concepts, right? So if you're going to shelter in place and it's a severe winter storm and you're stuck at home, we encourage you to have the 2 weeks ready, but we also encourage you to have a go bag to support that you can take with you. And the Red Cross has phenomenal programs around helping develop those, but we want to just encourage you to remember those 6 P's. So the people, pets, can't forget them. Papers, so important papers would be things like marriage certificates, insurance forms, or insurance policies, leases, or any legal documents, trusts, things like that. Most of us probably have those stored on the cloud, but it's also, if you do have paper copies, encourage you to have those in some sort of I have a little fireproof little bag that I kind of keep stuff in, passports, things like that, that can easily be grabbed and brought with us. Photographs, again, a lot of us have that stored now on the cloud and Instagram, but there's, if you have family things that you just absolutely can't replace, consider maybe tucking those in there if you possibly can. Plastic and cash, it's important to have a credit card of probably a couple different types. If you're like me, I always try to use my American Express and I always get denied. But it has great rewards. So, but it's also, so maybe have a couple, maybe a Visa and a MasterCard and an American Express or two if you have those, and cash. And during 2020, there were areas of Oregon that were impacted by infrastructure impacts that basically necessitated that they couldn't do any credit card sales because the phone lines and the internet was down, that they couldn't connect. So it's important to have cash. And then any prescription or non-prescription over-the-counter medications you might need to use you might need to have to live and or live better. Or it's good to just have some of your standard ibuprofen, acetaminophen type stuff, Imodium, things like that you might want to throw in there. So, all right. So a lot of us really do our preparedness in a vacuum, but it's important to remember that a lot of disasters really necessitate a community and a neighborhood response and preparedness, if possible. That's not always going to be true of everybody, but if you live in a community where this is practical, I encourage you to network with your neighbors and friends. This is particularly important, I think, if maybe you have somebody in your neighborhood or you or a loved one has like mobility issues or doesn't drive. Working with your neighbors to align and have a cohesive evacuation strategy, for lack of a better word, I guess, is a great opportunity to make sure that if you don't drive or a loved one doesn't drive or a neighbor doesn't drive, that they're involved in somebody's evacuation plan so they get out. The last thing you want to do is rely on the government to come get you out, not because we don't want to, but because in really critical instances, sometimes resources are really strapped. And so encourage people to be able to make sure that they can evacuate without assistance. And a lot of times neighbors and friends and family can be a good tool for that. Just wanted to kind of just reiterate the level 3-level evacuation system. And just in Oregon in 2014, a number of stakeholders got together including the Oregon State Sheriff's Association, Oregon State Fire Marshal Office, Oregon Emergency Management, and agreed upon a standardized 3-level evacuation system. And so if you think of level 1 is there is a threat out there near your community and you need to be informed and you should be preparing to evacuate. All the way to level 3, which is go now, means that there is an imminent threat to your community. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to burn your house down, but it certainly means that we can't guarantee that your house won't get burned down. Not that we could do that anyway, but level 3 is really that other end of that spectrum. So really need to evacuate and go now or leave immediately. And then level 2 is kind of that middle of the ground. I would say that a lot of people should strongly consider evacuating at level 2. You should be able to evacuate at a moment's notice. So if you have particular challenges around, say, reasons why it might take you longer to evacuate, or you live in a neighborhood with a lot of busy streets that might get clogged up with traffic, level 2 might be the time to go. Or frankly, if you want to just maybe go across town and have dinner and see how this thing plays out, might be a good opportunity to go contribute to the economy for an evening and then see how it goes out, how it goes. I would say that oftentimes we'll issue some sort of evacuation notice, one of the levels, and within a few hours, that's able to be adjusted or even decreased because of effective firefighting and suppression. So, that's always an option for you. I would like to point out that these don't always go in that nice level 1, level 2, level 3 with a nice, 45-minute break in between so we can mentally prepare for it. Occasionally it can be level 1, it can just stay there for a long time. And then sometimes fires or a threat would indicate that we would go immediately to level 3 and there's really no time. So those no notice events are probably very dangerous and really what we should be prepared for year round, but particularly during the height of fire season, we want our communities to be able to execute a level 3 evacuation promptly and efficiently. So a lot of the preparedness should be around that. Here's just the standard NFPA home ignition zones slide. Really wanted to point this out because, there are circumstances that evacuation, for sometimes people, you look at fires across the Western United States particularly, and they weren't able to evacuate. And so if they've done their defensible space and their home hardening, this buys them a second chance if they can evacuate, right? So just from a standpoint of preserving your property and your treasured items and supporting your neighbors, because we know that one structure starts, it's harder for it generally makes the community less safe. But then also this is just a good practice to add an extra layers of safety for you and your family. Wanted to just give a couple highlights. This should probably be with the alerts page, but this is what those texts look like. So if you notice, whoever did this took these screenshots of these texts. These are tests, by the way, I believe. Change the number. So when you get your annual test, and if you go back to your text messages from May 1st, if you go in and create that contact for that number to Everbridge or Deschutes Alerts or whatever you want to call it, it reminds you that that's where that's coming from. This year in particular, we got a lot of calls thinking that our test message was a scam, and it wasn't. So this is one way, because that number that it comes from a text, if you go back to that, you should see any messages you ever got from Everbridge on that. So just to point out that this person, whoever took these screenshots, changed their contact to Everbridge. I just noticed that because I just changed mine the other day to make sure it worked after we got so many scam calls, or people thinking it was a scam. So if it comes from Everbridge or it comes from Deschutes Alerts, then you know it's not a scam, you know it's real. So.
Or were there any scams? Did you know
Well, I mean, there's always scams.
I mean-
But, not related to our test, no. But what happened was, you know, inevitably, we do these tests, and I think 2 years in a row, law enforcement agencies have put out notices around, hey, protect yourself against scams, literally within a day or two of we do this test message. I think people are on high alert, which absolutely should be. And because Everbridge, the way the system works now is you click a link to get the full message. I think people are a little hesitant to that. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Just familiarize yourself either with the number that's going to come from, or change it into your phone as a contact, so it's a little bit more trusted.
Nathan, can you send any kind of like a test, like a self-test on that system, just to check that works, or is it just the countywide test that?
No, yeah, no, the system, that would be a great, I'll recommend that to Everbridge to allow that. Yeah, the system doesn't allow, or doesn't have that functionality.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, one of the reasons why we try to do it annually. And then we actually do, a test, reminder paid message to people that have access and functional needs, or have self-identify as having additional needs. We do that also a little earlier in the year, because then we've partnered with Department of Human Services the last couple of years to do phone outreach to those people that don't update their profile, to make sure that they're that everything is still right in the system for them. So, but no, at this point, you rely on us to
That annual.
do
test.
that annual test.
Okay.
If you are worried, like say you live in an area that all your neighbors got alerts and you didn't, give us a call. We'll look at your system and try to figure out what's going on. Sometimes it's just really simple, like people will put in, they didn't geocode their address correctly or something like that, but.
Yeah.
So this QR code should function. I didn't test it this morning, but that takes you, that'd take you to Deschutes.org/emergency, which is our emergency information dashboard. And so we encourage you to bookmark this site. And when there are evacuations in place, we try to get this site updated as quick as possible. We have a number of workflows around getting that updated as evacuations are being made. Now, if it's a evacuation of like a couple houses, you know, or law enforcement's doing a search warrant, they evacuate a few homes, those don't necessarily go on here. But if there's a fire evacuation or significant event that causes significant evacuations, they would go on here. And that dashboard looks like this. And we're constantly kind of updating it. We work with the GIS IT folks to update this dashboard as kind of throughout the year, but usually about this time of year, we stop meddling with it because we want it to work for the summer. And then in the winter, we tinker with it and try to improve it. So some improvements we did this last year was we actually moved it to a new, I can't remember what they call it, but an Esri product. It's like an experience or something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but so up at the top, so you see Deschutes County Emergency Information. Below that, there's a few tabs. There's going to be some additional tabs up there that we're working through. But the main page, the landing page, which is really the emergency information, is up in the top left corner. If there is an incident, that will have a little incident summary. Down below that is shelters. So if there is a shelter activated, it'll list the shelters. And all that is going to correspond with stuff that's on the map. And so when we go in and we drop an incident on the map, and there's a field where we put in a little information about that, that's what automatically populates the top left corner. If we put a shelter on the map, that automatically populates that list. And then any evacuation levels. So like if you'll see green, yellow, red on the map, according to those evacuation levels. And then on the right side is there's a couple social media pages, our sheriff's office and Deschutes County 911 social media accounts. And then if you see in the bottom left, and we're kind of debating whether we're going to keep this, but is the current messages for that are currently out in Everbridge. So when we took this screen grab, must have been on March 13th of 2024, and there was a missing person in Redmond that Redmond PD had put out an alert on. So, that you can also go to the message portal for Everbridge and also see all the alerts that are out there. So, some workflow improvements that we've worked on is we're utilizing a vendor or product called Zone Haven, where we develop pre-identified evacuation zones. Now, not every one of those zones is going to always be completely evacuated. So, because it's really hard to develop the perfect pre-identified evacuation zone. But for really rapidly escalating events, and, those wind-driven events where, pose a significant threat to community, between Zone Haven, the fact that we've incorporated those polygons into our alert warning system, and we've improved our template system in Everbridge, we feel like we've gotten to a point where we're getting pretty efficient and quick at getting those alerts out. So I don't want to give a time, but I would say, what used to take several minutes is taking significantly less to get those alerts out. And we've, at least at the sheriff's office, and we haven't made it to other agencies yet, but we've done some kind of initial response training for our supervisors, on kind of, managing an initial response to fire and implementing emergency evacuations. And so, we're confident that in those really rapidly escalating incidents, we can get alert warning out pretty quick. But, again, that's always dependent upon circumstances that sometimes are outside our control, but we've been training our folks on that this year. Oh, I think I double clicked here. Okay. So if you do have to evacuate, by the way, that's a picture from the gas station at in Rainbow, looking at the Holiday Farm fire. And that was a gas station that was out of power and communication for quite some time. Logistically, it became challenging to get fuel in and out of there. But just wanted to point that out. That kind of goes back to why you should maybe have some cash on hand if you all right, if you do have to evacuate, oops. Oh man, I'm sorry, guys. Gals. Important to dress appropriately. So I've seen a few videos out there. I think it's an old video, but I remember it really struck me as, I think it was Southern California. These people are evacuating. It's an urban area. They're evacuating down the middle of the street, and they're all like shorts, flip-flops, and tank tops, and in an ember shower. And I'm thinking, wow, that must have been really uncomfortable. So encourage you to wear long pants, long sleeves, natural fibers, so cotton or wool, denim, good sturdy boots, preferably leather, have some gloves, have a neckerchief or some, preferably all cotton face covering that you can put over your face, again, just to protect your exposed skin. A wide brim hat is good, and some eye protection. Another thing you might want to consider in your evacuation kit would be an N95 mask. And for this, because we're not trying to control a spread of a communicable disease, the ones that you get at Home Depot with the valve that are a little bit more comfortable to breathe in and out of would probably be fantastic. But that N95 is going to protect you a little bit from particulate matter, and also just offer a little bit of protection in your mouth and nose for, breathing in soot and ash. So, the reason why we share this is that, one, we'll want to, if for some reason you get stuck or your vehicle breaks down, it affords you a little bit better protection if you have to seek some alternatives. And if you have to end up hunkering down in a big wide open parking lot, you're going to be a lot more comfortable like this than you would be in shorts and flip flops. Even though it might be a little hot, it's not going to be as uncomfortable as those embers. Anybody that's fought fire probably has like the little spots between their shirt and their glove, that like you get the little scars there. It just, they sting a little, or down your neck. It is what it is. So, but, protect some of your exposed skin. leave early. If you make the decision to evacuate, go. Don't, now is not the time to like, well, did I make the right? Just go. Like if you decide to evacuate and you follow the instructions, or you decide to go at a level 1 or level 2, encourage you to do so earlier. That does a couple of things. One, it helps you, get you ahead of traffic, but also helps your neighbors, because if we can spread out the evacuation, that tends to have less traffic impacts. These are really stressful situations. Evacuating during a wildfire can be incredibly stressful, even if you're not driving through fire and blowing embers and smoke. Just the fact that it's incredibly disruptive. You're worried about your property, you're worried about your family, you're worried about what you forgot at home. If you couldn't catch your animals, right? Whatever the situation is, it's going to be stressful. And it's even going to be more stressful if there's heavy smoke or blowing embers and things like that, which, but the important thing here is prepare yourself mentally now, that could be a possibility, and kind of do a little, we do a kind of mental training, right? In public safety, like, I drive by a 7-Eleven, I ask myself, hey, if I drove by that 7-Eleven, I saw somebody with a mask and a gun in there, how would I respond to that? Because that causes my brain to start kind of figure out, like, how would I solve some of those problems, right? That helps us stay calm in an emergency. Please drive carefully. I want to say this is, I don't actually know. I thought this was maybe Columbia River Gorge, but I don't think it is. You could be in some situations where it's really scary, but drive appropriately, headlights on, windows rolled up, AC turned to recirculate. All of those things will help improve your chances and your probability of success for a safe evacuation. And that's all I had, unless there's questions.
So that last slide, you'd actually recommend somebody driving, I'm just curious about that. Is that because they're trying to evacuate?
It really depends on what's behind you.
Oh.
No, I mean, we don't want people to evacuate. Perfect world, you're not evacuating through that. But if you look at a lot of the videos of Paradise, those are some, or other emergencies, those are some realities that you at least need to mentally prepare yourself for. That is not the ideal.
Yeah.
We aspirationally want people to evacuate when the roads are clear, there's no smoke, there's no fire, there's no embers. But the reality of it is certain circumstances could prove otherwise. So how do I say this in a way that doesn't set a precedent or tie me up here? But I think the reality of it is, this is why you want to leave early. But if you find yourself in situations where there is flames, your vehicle does provide some radiant heat protection. But what I would suggest would be to minimize your close proximity to significant flaming combustion. And if that means you stop at a wide spot where there's a big wide open green meadow and you wait for that to burn through and then you drive through, maybe that's the best choice. But again, this is, one snapshot out of.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay, I got a question too, Nathan.
Yeah.
I was wondering, are you guys planning on doing any mock or practice evacuations? Because that's, especially, certain areas have limited evacuation routes.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Like Deschutes River Woods.
Yes.
Yeah. So at this time, we don't have any on the books. We've tossed that around. We have to be careful with those because the risks of doing a mock evacuation, anytime you start, adding that traffic, you're always assuming a certain degree of risk of like stacking up a car. And then if that's part of, so I don't know, I need to seek legal advice on that one.
Because I'm getting asked that all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, because, we got 5,500 people there, and we've only got 2 exit locations, so.
Yeah.
That might emphasize the importance of communicating that even if it's a level 1 or level
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
Well, I actually, when I tell people, if we have a level 1, go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
There is the traffic.
yeah. So we are seeking some funding to do some analysis of, kind of taking populations, potential vehicle, counts, and kind of assigning evacuation capacity and then identifying kind of known pain points. They're likely, they'll likely be the same ones that we all probably think of. But we might catch some new ones that we weren't aware of, or it might actually cause us to prioritize on other things that maybe aren't as bad as we think they are. And then with future goal of like developing some mitigation strategies around what, how to manage those. That's like DRW, I think the county got the south exit, that south interchange with High Desert Museum as part of into the TSP.
Right.
That's huge for DRW.
I know.
Like if that, probably won't happen in my career, but I'd love to see it in my career.
Yes. Me too.
When that gets built, that's gonna be a game changer for
Yes.
DRW as far as the evacuation capacity and overall safety to that community. But there's also some new technology out there that it's incredibly expensive. So there's some working around how we can get some access to it that uses kind of AI technology to simulate model evacuation time and do. But we just submitted another grant, or pre-application this last week for a countywide evacuation time estimate study, and hoping that will give us inform us on some areas and maybe we could do some mitigation around that, what could help. So, yeah.
Nathan, could you touch on temporary evacuation points? And
Thank you.
I know on the, your emergency website, it had symbols for shelters, but would you have a different symbol for a TEP?
Yeah, I need to look at our current dashboard and see if we have the different symbology for that. But yeah, we almost always go initially to a temporary evacuation point. And the rationale for that is they're quicker to establish. Basically, all we're looking for is a parking lot that we can send people to. But we have worked with the Red Cross to co-locate those at places that are already on the Red Cross's shelter list. And so that if, we're hour 4 or 5, and it looks like this is gonna go all night, and we have the demand for it, then the Red Cross, we work with Red Cross to open up the shelter at that location. We started using temporary evacuation points in 2020 during COVID because there was a real reluctance to do congregate sheltering. And the fact of that is we liked them so well, we've kept them. And that, a lot of our evacuations are for 4 or 5 hours or even less. And just having a place for people to go to get some more information until we can figure out whether we need to open a shelter or we're going to be able to send them home in a couple hours. That has been really successful. We also did one in Lapine for actually Northern Klamath County, and we actually signed up a whole bunch of people in their alert system while they were at the temporary evacuation point, because we had them in Lapine. And so we just took our laptop, tailgated the truck, and we're like, "Are you signed up for the alert?" "Nope." "Hey, you want to?" So, never let a crisis go on.
Wasted.
Or
We got a question in the chat.
Yeah, there's a couple questions from, will sheriff personnel be directing traffic from our subdivision evacuations or?
It really depends. I would say as a general rule, we try to allow the transportation system to self-manage. It's designed for a reason. And anytime we, and there are absolutely circumstances where we would necessitate doing active traffic management, but that's only if it's required. If traffic is managing and people are kind of working it out, we tend to let them do that. It's safer for us, it's safer for traffic, and it also tends to actually just work better. Now, there's certain circumstances where we have to take over an intersection, we will, but we'll also be working with, our public works partners like, Bob, you're out Sisters area, if I remember right. So, Sisters Public Works, County Roads, ODOT, but all the public works agencies would help and get involved in this. And part of that is just using the best tool for the job. So our sheriffs and law enforcement folks would likely be doing other tasks. So really depends on the resources availability and the need. So we, if we can let an intersection manage and it's working okay, that would be our default.
So for instance, like in Sun River, where there's so many guests during fire season and all the roundabouts, and then the confusion in an event, they probably have a plan through their public works or something to direct traffic.
Yeah, and then a lot of that has to do with signage, pointing people towards the right, towards the exit instead of the other way. And then around the roundabouts, there's some strategies around, closing a leg of a roundabout to keep traffic moving more quick, more efficiently in one direction. But again, that's really, that's who we really rely on, our public works folks, because they're the experts when it comes to transportation stuff. And then as far as evacuation, I would, that's completely up to you, but, go ahead and lock your house if you want, if your house catches on fire during a wildland fire and firefighters, if they're able to, attempt some suppression, they can force their way in to put the fire out if they have to. But if you want to lock your house, that's totally fine. But we would encourage you to lock your house and then hang a white, pillowcase or something on your door to let us know that you've evacuated, so they were not beating on your door, forever trying to get somebody to come to the door.
Is the alert system location specific other than just your home? If you're in an evacuation zone mobily,
Yeah.
would you be alerted?
So that's a great question, and it depends on the tools we're using. So a couple things is for the opt-ins, it is based on the addresses you put into that system. So if you have work, school, home, you can put all those addresses in that system, and it will alert you for any of those locations. If you're mobile, and a jurisdiction is using the capability, there's some limitations to it that we're working with the vendor on, but there is some capability for us to use what's called an incident zone. And if you have the Everbridge app and you have your location turned on, it would let you know if the jurisdiction uses that incident zone. The challenge of what we're working on is that incident zone right now only allows you to send that alert out once, whereas most of our jurisdictions have it. It'll go out and then it'll retry in a certain amount of time, and the system doesn't allow you to use that incident zone and that. So we're working on which one of those is most important and if we can get the vendor to change that. So, but again, they're an international vendor, and sometimes things like that, there's a reason why it's like that. And then the other thing is iPods. So we don't use iPods very often around here. But in certain circumstances where we just have no confidence that we're getting people, we can use iPods, and that's that like Amber Alert message. The problem with the WIA is that it overshoots its area quite substantially sometimes, and you're limited in some character counts and things like that. So yeah, I don't know if you were on the screen or if you were. I can't tell who was up there, but why don't we go?
Yeah, I think I probably brought this up
Yeah.
before, and you were just mentioning that, I know I've received messages more than once that, they're kind of alarming but confusing at the same time. And then after a little bit of digging, I find out that it's like miles and miles and miles away from me. So it's not a Deschutes alert or Everbridge,
Yeah, so those were probably WIA alerts. So in 2020, a number of people got alerts from the west side of the mountains, just the way the cell towers pick those up. We've issued them a couple times on fires along the Cascade Crest in partnership with Lane County. And the consistency on where you get that message is a little wonky. Last time we did it, somebody that worked for our office that was 20 miles, 30 miles away from any zone got it at her house. So it's, and that's why it's really important for us to use those that's why we use those sparingly and when we can very clearly articulate the area. So like, yeah, you get this alert, but it's like, oh, the Three Sisters Wilderness, near Coltis Lake. Okay, that's not my house. So, something like that. I think we have a question online.
Yes, good morning. And thank you first for this information. In one of the slides, you mentioned follow directions when you leave early. And so those directions would be on the road, or would it be on the Deschutes County Emergency Information site? Or what do you mean by follow directions?
So we have a couple different ways. One would be if we can put some special instructions in the alert that goes out. If there aren't any, just assume that you're going to leave your normal way you normally go every day, which is going to be 99% of the time. But if for some reason, like we have a road closed and we don't want people to use a certain road, we could give those instructions to leave via a different road. The other thing is oftentimes when we do have people directing traffic, a lot of this is related to this phenomenon and it's totally understandable as somebody that I want to know what's going on. But when you drive up to somebody who works for Public Works or a sheriff's deputy or a city police officer, state trooper, and they're directing traffic and they're waving you through, please do not stop. Just go the direction they're sending you to go. There's probably a really good reason. But inevitably, we get about 1 out of 3 cars stops. Hey, what's going on? Why can't I go that way? Can I go this way? Can I go that way? And we just ask that you, for the interest of keeping traffic moving and keeping our vehicles per lane per hour as high as possible during an evacuation, we would encourage you just, if somebody's sending you a certain direction, just go that direction. And if you have to drive a little ways out of your way to get back on track, then we apologize for the inconvenience in advance.
I have a question about go bags.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a couple of questions. One, medications, you pointed out, pills is important, but a lot of medications you're not allowed to have like an extra stockpile.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you've heard any good advice on how to manage that, whether you have them ready to go in your bathroom or your kitchen or something, so you can quickly throw them into your go bag, or if there are some other good suggestions on how to manage things that you can't keep in your go bag all the time.
Yeah, my thought on that is that's a great point. My thought on that is have them ready in one location that you can easily grab them, either it's in some sort of organized, box or, and then have something like bright yellow on your go bag that's like, hey,
Checklist.
yeah, with like, don't forget, and then that way as you grab your go bag, because you're probably going to remember your go bag, but are you going to remember all those other things that are somewhere else? So that's one way that that's how I would have to do it. Because I forget everything.
Have you heard of any good backup plans for when your neighborhood is evacuated, but you are on the other side of town at work or whatever, in terms of getting your animals or your go bag out?
Super challenging situation. That's where I think if you have a trusted neighbor, that's probably your best bet. The same thing goes with if you have kids at home, we're talking mid-August, kids are home from school, parents are at work. It's, usually about 2:30 in the afternoon when these things go off. And so do you have a trusted neighbor that can grab your kids and your pets and, your go bag? To me, that's probably the best. Aside from that, because oftentimes it's going to be very difficult to get back in if you're already out. Yeah, we haven't figured out a good way to solve that problem. But I think just a little bit of foresight, working with your neighbors, that's a great question. Working with your neighbors and again, if you have trusted neighbors, right? So
maybe tack on to your answer about medications. Red Cross has health nurses and other health professionals who are Red Cross volunteers. So like routinely when we have house fires, people evacuate and don't have a chance to get to their medication. Sometimes it's time sensitive. And working with the Red Cross, we can facilitate them getting those prescriptions filled. So that would, if there's a shelter open and folks show up and needing medications, we do have a way to take care of them.
Yeah, thanks, David. I appreciate that.
Do you have, the importance of neighbors can't be understated, but depends on the neighborhood. And if people even talk to their neighbors. Do you have a way to clearly identify the people with the messaging that have like special needs that might be difficult to evacuate?
No, we don't. We keep that pretty privileged information, I guess is the right way, out of privacy. And I think that it's time for us to go back, but we did do a presentation with a group that represents persons with
Disabilities.
additional needs in the community. And at that time, the recommendation was that wasn't a good idea. And frankly, what we found is most people really, this is just an awareness piece, right? So if you have a mobility challenge, for example, that this is an awareness piece, that this is another component that they're managing. And we want to help with that, but, obviously we want to just help, not, dictate how, right? So it's important for, us to be a resource and to support as they want and or need, as opposed to, kind of coming up with things that we think make sense. So, and because I thought that one, I asked that question at that meeting. They're like, no, we would prefer that. That's not really a good idea.
So it's not in the exact same area, but I mean, I remember there was a big heat wave. I think it was in Portland or something. A lot of people just died in their apartments and stuff because their neighbors weren't aware.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a couple of things on that, not to go down a rabbit hole. But I think that's kind of a testament to kind of where society is different today than it probably was in the past. And that, that sense of community and knowing your neighbors, again, we worry and fear things that I think probably weren't the case in generations past, but I think, that sense of community is kind of the first stop in that. The second thing of that is working with service organizations to serve those populations and those vulnerable populations to have a higher degree of awareness around those folks, I think would be a second level. We, during a heat event, June of 2021, we did work with, like Meals on Wheels, for example. And between us and public health, I think there were some flyers that were able to go out. It was kind of timing wise was a little wonky, but like, hey, here's the symptoms of a heat emergency. Call 911 if you have this, right? We did some messaging around that because inevitably some of that population in particular are the last people ever to call 911. And we wanted them to know, like, hey, no, if you're experiencing this or this, that's a medical emergency, call 911. And our fire and EMS partners supported that. They're like, yes, absolutely. If we get a few calls we didn't need, we'd rather have that than to have somebody just lay there and die of a heat emergency. So there's some things we can do as a community, but yeah, those are challenging.
So the best thing is have good neighbors.
Yeah, which unfortunately not all of us are.
But yeah, it's hard.
Who's making the decision on what level of evacuation and what's the criteria for doing that?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'll start with the criteria first. Generally, so it takes a look, first and foremost is what is current expected. So we're talking wildfire scenario. What's the current expected fire behavior? And then what are those values or those populations at risk that are potentially in that impacted zone? I would say that nobody's really created a real phenomenal decision support tool as far as like, should this be level 1 or 2 or 2 or 3? I think we're really good at like, oh, that's level 1 or that's level 3. But we are working through that. We have, we are developing some tools to kind of help suss that out a little bit. But some other factors that we take into consideration would be like, what's the traffic or the road infrastructure? Do we have adequate ingress? Do we have adequate egress? So do we have a bunch of fire equipment going down the only evacuation route? Do we have adequate resources to effect a quick level 3 if we have to? Are we talking 20 homes or are we talking 2,000 homes? Because that matters, right? What time of the day is it? So a couple factors there, right? So typically around here, we have, our burn period is, late morning to early morning or around midnight, give or take. If we have a fire that's really romping and stomping at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we know we have 12 hours that sucker's gonna go, or if it's Aubrey Hall, all night, but that's a different story. But, versus also time is we don't like to evacuate people at night if we don't have to. So if it's 6 o'clock and we're thinking, oh, we might have to evacuate this neighborhood, we might make that call at 6 versus wait till 9. Now it's dark and that just adds the complexity of it. So there's a degree of nuance involved, I'll say that. And then as far as who makes the decision, it's really a joint decision between law enforcement and fire managers. So what fire folks will say is we don't order evacuations, we make recommendations to law enforcement, which, hey, I don't blame them. Evacuations are terrible. Like, it's a no-win situation. Why'd you evacuate me? Why didn't you evacuate me? You evacuated me too early. You evacuated me too late. I mean, that's because, it's just the reality of it is they're super inconvenient. They're really disruptive. There's a lot of degree of nuance and ambiguity around them, right? So they're really kind of not fun for people being evacuated or the people being evacuated. But ultimately what in Deschutes County, at least in the unincorporated area, generally what that decision is, ultimately it's a delegation from the sheriff. So, but kind of the standard process is we go to incident, we tie in with a fire IC, probably develop some sort of unified incident command, make some decisions regarding whether we should do evacuations and when we should do those evacuations, how we should do those evacuations. Make a quick phone call up the chain of command, say, hey, this is the plan. And usually that's given a green light and then we make that happen. That's kind of the standard order of business. Now, there are some circumstances that are more austere than that, but that's kind of the standard order of business.
So it's not if the fire's 5 miles away from here, it's a level 1. If it's 2 miles away, it's a level 3 here.
No, it would probably be more, a more effective metric would be time away. But again, that 3 hours to evacuate 10 homes versus 20 or 200 homes or 2,000 homes is, kind of also a factor. But, because distance oftentimes, depending on the fuel type and the conditions and the wind and all that, 5 miles is a really long ways away, and some conditions 5 miles is not very far away at all. So, yeah.
So there is the bureaucracy between fire management and law enforcement to make that decision. They're the ones that are identifying it.
Yeah. Yep.
And making the call and then putting out the order.
Yes.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we're really well practiced at it. And so it doesn't take a tremendous amount of time to make that call. In some cases, we almost make those calls almost too fast because the system's not set up to actually make it happen. But no, it's a relatively pretty efficient process. Yeah.
Nathan, would you say that's for rapidly emerging incidents, probably just that, a little more expedient though, probably a phone call or two to the fire managers or maybe a conference call?
Yeah.
Make that decision.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also happened there have been circumstances there was a fire in 2018 that I arrived on scene and I was there was, I think, a chief officer, 1 engine, 1 deputy, and then me, and it was already burning a second house, second structure. And I just did it that's not the ideal. Yeah. That's where I said those are those austere conditions. They're like, oh, hey, we're going to go level 3 to this road right now. And then we'll meet, clean it up, but that was just like, it was a wind driven fire and light flashy fuels and it was moving. So it was like, there wasn't a lot of time to like, get together on that one. But then, we got together and it worked out. It was the right, I should say right, because that makes me sound like I know. It worked out. It was, it seemed appropriate. How's that?
So if there's a level one or that has started, are we gonna be told what that parking lot is where we go? At what point will we know? Because
So usually, we'll start a temporary evacuation point at level 2 or 3.
2 or 3, okay.
But if you evacuated at level 1 per se, you decide, hey, I'm gonna go to dinner. And then you could be sitting in a restaurant in the next town over, you're still gonna get that alert for level 2 and 3, and you'll get additional information.
Yeah, because we have a lot of people out or Widgie that we don't have many routes out, and a lot of people are saying, I'm gonna go at level 1. So it's like, yeah, where do we go?
Yeah, that's something that you as a neighborhood could also say, hey,
Decide.
At level 1, we've identified this place, a couple options. But, I really at level 1, you could go in and do your shopping for the, you could, and at level 1, I do want to back up. So like if you have large animals, like you've got livestock you have to move, horses, probably level 1's the time you got to be figuring that out. So hopefully you have a backup plan. You have, a friend, or you've got some pasture space or a corral that you've identified that you can take your animals to. And so, level 1 activities around that, like large animals, things like that. I would say that, and David, I don't know what if you might have a little slightly different perspective, but at least in Deschutes County, our experience is very few people take advantage of shelters. They either go to friends or a hotel, or I don't know where they go, but we must, in that regard, and again, a lot of that depends on the demographic of the neighborhood we're evacuating, right? So, but historically, we've evacuated neighborhoods that didn't use the shelter system much. So I'm assuming that they went to friends or family members' houses, kind of general assumption. But maybe that's a survey we could do someday, because that might be interesting to know.
I'm also, says, I'm assuming that you also consider, don't hook up your RV and go out, because everybody starts hooking up their RVs and going out, so that just makes it more difficult to evacuate. Is that right or not?
I would say at level 3, having a whole bunch of RVs on roads is challenging, but like definitely a level 1 if you wanted to pre-locate your move your RV somewhere else.
Yeah,
I think that's a
again,
general
that contributed in DRW to the bottleneck that they had.
Yeah.
And even that extra one that goes underneath the railroad tracks, I don't think that has enough.
No, that's actually drainage.
Yeah, the extra one goes over the railroad tracks down south. And again, it's not a feat, but it's a process to open that gate.
Yeah.
But I think at level 3.
But they had a really bad bottleneck. And it's a good thing that fire didn't really come into the community, because could have been a lot worse.
Well, that was before Baker Road interchange.
Yeah.
Yeah, too.
Yeah.
Hey.
Do you have any?
I think I'm off the hook.
Good stuff. Any other questions online? Otherwise, we will move to. Great. Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate you.
Yeah,
Doing that for us.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
bet.
All right, so do you have anything to share, Craig, or Roundtable? Start us off?
No?
No?
Nothing to share, sorry.
You- No?
It's me.
Come on, Dean, you gotta have something for me.
I wanted to thank, Deschutes County for, generous grant that we got to support our low-income, seniors and low-income disabled. You know, they want some defensible space too, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
Nothing from Red Cross this month?
Well, I got my 3 dumpsters out and they're full now, and they don't get picked up until Friday, so that's a good thing.
Is it going good?
So, that's good.
Good problem, yeah.
We just got our 2 bins delivered in Sundance yesterday, and I immediately started getting texts like, oh, how much can I put in there? So it would be interesting to see how fast ours fill. And today is a budget meeting for the rural fire district. So if anybody has strong opinions on how their tax dollars are spent, if you live in that donut around Bend, you're welcome at the fire administration building today.
So Emily Curtis wasn't able to make the meeting this morning, so I do have something for her. I'm trying to share the flyer. See it. Working? No? Sure. Right? What the heck?
I was gonna say around the dumpsters, because ours are coming in a week. I'm trying to decide how often can we automatically say, can you come every other day? Cause I have a feeling ours is gonna fill up really fast. So just from your experience.
From my experience, you have to give them weeks